Yo guys, what's going on? I'm Tim Kelly. This is The Real Sports Talk. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are in between days of Game 1 and Game 2 in the NBA Finals. If you missed it last night, Akeem and I recapped the Spurs led by Tony Parker and his amazing shot down the stretch, which really was the dagger in the game last night. They get a 92-88 win in Game 1 of the NBA Finals, and for some weird reason, there's 2 days in between, and then on Sunday we get Game 2, and it's still in Miami. I don't understand why Game 2 isn't on Saturday. Regardless of that, there is some news throughout the NBA today because Dennis Rodman, in the same week that Karl Malone put LeBron James in his all-time top 5 and then did not put Michael Jordan, and he later retracted that, and actually what he said about that, it was a little funny to me, the reasoning for why he did not put Michael Jordan in. Maybe it was true, maybe it wasn't. I didn't really touch that because I didn't think it was that interesting to talk about. This comparison, though, it was a little interesting. And let me say, first of all, I have a great respect for the NBA history. Yes, I'm 17, but I've gone back and watched every era of the NBA. There's no question about that. The problem that I have with what Dennis Rodman said today is Dennis Rodman is not a better player than LeBron James. And if you missed it, Dennis Rodman was extremely outspoken in an interview this morning where he said Jordan trumps LeBron. And if you think that's fine. I don't think he trumps LeBron. Is Michael Jordan better than LeBron James? No doubt about it. But let's go through and read some of the quotes off that he had from this interview because it was very interesting and I thought very off base for the most part. He said, it's really not a comparison. If LeBron was in the late 80s and early 90s, he would be just an average player. To do what Michael has done, what he did was more charisma, there was more articulating, and stuff like that than Michael Jordan's game. LeBron is more like there's no flash to his game. He's a great player, don't get me wrong. He's a hell of a player. I'll give him that. But to me, Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan are probably one of the best 1-2 punches that I've ever seen. There's a lot to soak in from that comment. Let's begin with the average player part. That part makes absolutely no sense because of what LeBron James can do. It's not like he can only do one part of the game. He can pass at a high level, a ridiculous level. He might go down as one of the top 5 or 10 passers in NBA history. He can rebound. He can shoot. He really has gotten to the point in his career where he can do it all. And I think some of the stuff that isn't taken into consideration by Dennis Rodman is LeBron James is already considered an elite defender. If you throw in hand checking and then the fact that in the 90s they did not have to get out of the lane for the defensive 3 seconds, I think that would only make LeBron James a better defender. So that part is off base to me. Saying he's average is just so stupid it's not even worth responding to because LeBron James' career 10 years through has literally trumped what Dennis Rodman did. And Dennis Rodman's a Hall of Famer. That really speaks it to you. Dennis Rodman is a top 50 all-time player. LeBron James, before it's all said and done, will for sure be a top 10 player, maybe even a top 5 player. So for him to say that is stupid to me. The next part he says that Michael Jordan has more charisma and he's more articulating. Michael Jordan was a guard. LeBron James, while he can play guard, the thing that makes him so valuable is he can play in the post, which he's built on, and I think had he been playing in the 90s, he would have developed that a little bit early. He can play at the 3, he can play all 5 positions offensively and defensively, not to forget that, but I think the fact that Michael Jordan certainly was more charismatic, it's a completely different thing because you're not comparing him to Kobe Bryant and a guy that plays the same position. LeBron James plays a different position than what Michael Jordan does. Now, he kind of realizes, I think, in the middle that he sounds stupid, so he goes back on it already and says he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but to me, Scottie and Michael are the best 1-2 punch I've ever seen. What does that have to do with when you go from talking in one sentence about how LeBron wouldn't last in the 80s and 90s, and in the same sentence you go on to talking about how LeBron isn't better than Michael, and then you go on to talking about how Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan are the best 1-2 punch you've ever seen. The difference, I think, is you get Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan both in their primes. You're not getting Dwayne Wade in his prime, and really, Dwayne Wade and LeBron James, they've made it work. You don't get the best out of both of them at the same time. You rarely get the best out of both of them at the same time. I've seen a few instances, for example, I think in the game against the Spurs in the playoffs last year where they both had, where LeBron had 40 and 15, I think, or 40 and 19, and Dwayne Wade had 35 or 20, and like 25 of it came in the second half. You very rarely got that. And on the defensive side, I don't think LeBron James does measure up, at least to what we saw Scottie Pippen and Michael Jordan do in their era. The problem is we have never seen LeBron James with the ability to hand check, with the ability to play in the center or in the paint without having to get out every 3 seconds. So there's really not. It's extremely tough in my mind to draw a comparison. Now, I mentioned about LeBron James' perimeter defense being better. I think a lot of people feel like LeBron James, I've heard this sentiment a lot, that he wouldn't last in the 90s because he's soft. And I'm reading down this article with some of the Dennis Rodman's quotes, and I look down to the ESPN Conversations part at the bottom where people are responding, and some guy nailed it here. His name's C40AM. He says, "This is what bugs me with the whole you couldn't hit guys back in the day. Don't you think if LeBron existed back then, he would have dealt and adjusted with it differently?" And that's what I say. People tell me, oh, LeBron's soft, and I don't disagree. The flopping, though, is part of today's era. It's part of what the NBA has created with taking out hand checking. They've created softer defensive ways, I think, in the game today, and that's LeBron James being a product of the era that he came up in. That's why when you see Kobe Bryant not necessarily flop as much, he refuses to take charges. You see that he came up in the mid-90s, almost late 90s, and he was a product of that era. LeBron James is a product of a different era. Had LeBron James played in the 80s or 90s, he would have played differently. You wouldn't see him flopping like this. And look, I hate LeBron James flopping as much as anyone else, but it's a different era right now, and that's part of the game right now, unfortunately, and it's something that you cannot take back. Now, Dennis Rodman, the quote that really... I kind of looked at these quotes early on, and I said, I don't understand why necessarily he's going off at LeBron. And then you see this quote, "I'm just sick and tired of people comparing LeBron James to Michael Jordan. It's a whole different era, man." It is a whole different era. That's what I think everyone's trying to say here. And when people compare him, it doesn't necessarily mean, and there are people that think LeBron James is better or will be better than Michael Jordan. I don't think that is the case, but I think there's a very realistic possibility LeBron James could finish in the top 5 all time by the end of his career. And we compare Magic Johnson to Michael Jordan, we compare Larry Bird, we compare Wilt, we compare Hakeem, Shaq, Kobe, all these people, Tim Duncan, that we have in our top 10s all time. So why can't we compare LeBron James without this being so blasphemous, when LeBron James is one of the guys that we've seen be at a similar dominance this season to what Michael Jordan did at points in his career? I don't understand that, and I don't know. And Dennis Rodman would go on in this interview to say that Rodman easily believes his Bulls team would defeat James Heat. Well, let me think about this. On those Bulls teams, you were a very good team. You're looking at Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, who I would take over LeBron and Dwayne Wade. And then you think about what you have in the Heat, and you just realize how overrated of a team you are. You have an old Ray Allen. You have Chris Bosh, who is soft. Chris Bosh is a player that would not survive in the 90s. If Dennis Rodman wanted to go at Chris Bosh, that would have made a little bit more sense. And I just think Dennis Rodman's pointing out the most obvious thing here. He says it'd be no contest. The Heat has better talent than we have, but we have smarter players. I don't know if necessarily that's true, but I think that they have players, when we're thinking about some of those great Heat or Bulls teams that were in their prime, and you're also looking at just a better overall put-together team. And I'm not trying to take a shot with Michael Jordan there, but LeBron is a team that goes off of what he does. They're able to knock down threes when he drives. I don't think that that's necessarily the case for the Bulls. I think Michael Jordan made his teammates better, but he had probably more talent on that team in terms of the fact that Dwayne Wade's not in his prime right now. Chris Bosh, yeah, I guess he's in his prime, but he's certainly not showing it in these playoffs. The Heat have a team built around what LeBron James does, and they do certainly have some very good names on those teams, but very few of those names have had their best or are having their best right now or since they've been with LeBron James. So I think when Dennis Rodman says that LeBron James would be average in the 90s, I couldn't disagree more, and I think his build is exactly another one of the reasons why he would not be average in the 90s. But Dennis Rodman, entitled to his opinion. I'm sure we're going to get a bunch of 90's and 80's NBA lovers that will. And look, I'm not taking a shot at history. I've clearly said that I think Michael Jordan is a better player and will always be a better player than LeBron James. But it doesn't bother me when the comparison is made because that's what people like to do. People like to compare. The thing that bothers me when people take it a step further is when you see people saying LeBron's better than Jordan. That's the thing that bothers me, and I'll correct NBA fans when they do that because I don't agree with that statement. But whatever, Dennis Rodman thinks LeBron James would be average in the 1990s, and in other news, LeBron James is a better player than Dennis Rodman or Scottie Pippen really was overall. So I don't think that LeBron James is really going to take too much into this. He's a little bit more worried about Game 2 NBA Finals Sunday. We will see what goes down with that. I think the Heat will win, but I don't know. I think if the I think I'm kind of hoping the Heat win, so it's not a series where the Spurs win this in 4 games. I don't have a rooting interest, but I just want to see a good 7-game series. So we will see what happens. I'm Tim Kelly. This is The Real Sports Talk, and I'll catch you guys next time.